The Zephyrian fleet moved through space like a wounded animal seeking a place to die. Their ships, once magnificent and gleaming, now looked dull and desperate. Inside the largest vessel, the crew walked with heavy hearts and guilty eyes. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge, his blue-scaled hands gripping the control panel until his knuckles turned white. Behind him, his officers whispered in their native tongue, but he could feel their fear and shame radiating through the air. "Captain?" His second-in-command spoke softly. "The Queen's vital signs are getting weaker. The infestation has spread to her lungs now." Veltar closed his eyes. Queen Zarathis had ruled their people for 3 centuries. She was not just their leader but their mother, their protector, their very soul, and now they were abandoning her to die alone on a dead world. "The Council's decision is final," Veltar said, his voice cracking. "We cannot risk the entire species for one individual, even if she is our queen." The truth was more horrible than he could speak aloud. The space barnacles that had attached to their queen were not ordinary parasites. They were from the Void Sector, a region of space so dangerous that even pirates avoided it. The creatures didn't just feed on their host. They reproduced by sending spores through the air. One infected queen could destroy their entire civilization. 3 months ago, Queen Zarathis had led a rescue mission to save a mining colony from raiders. She had insisted on going herself, as she always did when her people were in danger. The colony was saved, but during the battle, she had flown too close to a derelict ship from the Void Sector. The ancient vessel had been covered in the cursed barnacles, and they had somehow transferred to her magnificent scales. At first, the royal healers thought they could remove the parasites. They tried everything: laser surgery, chemical treatments, even ancient magic passed down from their ancestors. Nothing worked. The barnacles seemed to grow stronger with each attempt to destroy them. They burrowed deeper into her flesh, their sharp edges cutting into her organs and bones. The queen had grown weaker each day. Her golden eyes, once bright as twin suns, had dimmed to the color of dying embers. Her voice, which could inspire armies or bring peace to warring factions, now came out as painful whispers. Most heartbreaking of all, she had stopped flying. The queen, who had soared through nebulae and danced among the stars, now could barely lift her massive wings. The Council of Elders had met in emergency session for 7 days and nights. The debate had been fierce and painful. Some argued that they should stay with their queen until the end, no matter the cost. Others pointed out that the spores were already beginning to spread to nearby crew members. The ship's medical bay had reported 12 new cases in the past week. Elder Crixnoth, the oldest and wisest of them all, had finally spoken the words no one wanted to hear. "We must choose between our love for one and our duty to all. The Queen herself would command us to save our people." And so the terrible decision was made. They would take Queen Zarathis to Kepler 442b, a dead planet in an empty system. They would leave her with enough supplies to last a few weeks, though everyone knew she would not survive that long. The planet was far from any shipping lanes, far from any inhabited worlds. When she died, the spores would have nothing to infect except barren rock and empty air. The Queen had accepted the decision with the grace and dignity she had shown throughout her reign. She had not begged or pleaded or used her royal authority to demand they stay. Instead, she had comforted her weeping subjects and assured them they were making the right choice. "My children," she had said, her voice barely audible, "a ruler's greatest privilege is to sacrifice for her people. I have lived a good life, longer than most beings in the galaxy. Do not mourn for me, but celebrate what we have built together." Now, as their ships approached the dead planet, Veltar felt as though he was leading his people through the valley of the shadow of death. The planet below was a brown and gray wasteland, with no atmosphere to speak of and no signs of life. It was the perfect tomb for a dying queen. The landing party was small and efficient. They set up a temporary shelter near a rocky outcropping that would provide some protection from radiation. Inside, they placed a comfortable bed, medical supplies, food, and water. They also left a holographic projector loaded with images and videos of her people, so she would not feel completely alone in her final hours. Queen Zarathis was too weak to walk, so they carried her on a medical stretcher. Even in her weakened state, she was magnificent to behold. The barnacles had covered much of her purple and gold scales, making her look like she was wearing armor of pain. But her eyes still held intelligence and compassion, and she managed a weak smile for each of her subjects who came to say goodbye. Remember, she whispered to Veltar as they prepared to leave. We are Zephyrians. We survive because we care for each other. Never let fear make you forget that. As the ships lifted off from the planet's surface, many of the crew members wept openly. They were leaving their queen to die alone on a dead world, and nothing would ever make that right. In the cargo bay, some of the younger Zephyrians had to be restrained from jumping ship and staying with their queen. The fleet set course for their home system, but their hearts remained on that barren planet with the dying queen they had abandoned. None of them knew that their paths would soon cross with a species known for doing impossible things and refusing to abandon anyone in need. The humans were coming, though it would be days before anyone realized it. Dr. Sarah Chen had always been drawn to the empty places in space. While other xenobiologists fought for assignments on lush garden worlds or bustling space stations, she volunteered for surveys of dead planets and abandoned systems. There was something peaceful about the silence, something honest about worlds that had given up pretending to be anything other than what they were. The research vessel Curiosity's Dream was small by human standards, with a crew of only 8 scientists and engineers. They were conducting a routine mineral survey of the Kepler 442 system, when their long-range sensors picked up something unexpected on the second planet. Heat signature, announced Marcus Webb, their sensor specialist. Artificial structure and... He paused, adjusting the controls. Life signs. Very faint, but definitely organic. Captain Lisa Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. On Kepler 442b? That planet's been dead for millions of years. Are you sure your sensors aren't picking up interference? No interference, Captain. There's definitely something alive down there. Something big. Sarah felt her heart race with excitement. First contact situations were rare, and most xenobiologists went their entire careers without encountering a new species. She had studied 17 different alien races, but she had never been the first human to meet one. Could be a stranded ship, suggested Dr. James Park, their team's linguist. Maybe survivors from a crash. Only one way to find out, Captain Rodriguez decided. Chen Park, you're with me on the shuttle. Webb, keep monitoring from orbit. If this goes badly, I want you ready for a quick extraction. The shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere toward the coordinates Webb had provided. The planet's surface was exactly what Sarah had expected. Barren rock formations, dried lake beds that had been empty for eons, and absolutely no signs of natural life. But as they approached the landing site, she saw something that made her gasp. A temporary shelter had been erected near a rocky cliff face. It was clearly alien in design, with flowing curves and a metallic surface that seemed to shift color in the light. But what captured Sarah's attention was the massive form lying partially in the shadow of the rocks. My God, Captain Rodriguez whispered. Is that a dragon? The creature was easily 40 feet long from nose to tail, with powerful wings folded against its sides. Its scales had once been beautiful, Sarah could tell, probably purple and gold based on the patches she could see. But much of its body was covered with dark, crusty growths that looked like some kind of barnacle or coral formation. Life signs are very weak, Dr. Park reported, scanning with his medical tricorder. Whatever it is, it's dying. As they approached the shelter, Sarah noticed that the creature's massive head was turned toward them. One golden eye, dim but alert, was watching their approach. There was intelligence in that gaze and something that might have been hope. It's aware of us, Sarah said softly. Captain, I think this might be a sapient being. Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. The universal translator is picking up some kind of signal, very faint like a whisper. Help, came a weak voice through their communicators. The word was barely audible, but unmistakably a plea. Please, help, Sarah's heart broke. Here was a magnificent creature, clearly intelligent and obviously suffering, asking for their aid. She had taken an oath as a doctor to do no harm and to help whenever possible. That oath had never been tested like this. Captain, she said, we have to help. Chen, we don't know anything about this species or these parasites. This could be dangerous. It's dying, Sarah replied firmly. Look at it. Whatever those things growing on it are, they're killing it. We're probably its last hope. Dr. Park was studying his readings more carefully. The parasites appear to be some kind of space-adapted organism. They're definitely not native to this planet, and Sarah's right, the creature is in critical condition. Hours, maybe days left at most. Captain Rodriguez looked from her crew to the dying dragon and back again. Sarah could see the conflict in her eyes. Starfleet regulations were clear about interfering with unknown biological agents. But human nature was equally clear about helping those in need. "What do you need?" the captain finally asked. Sarah was already pulling medical equipment from their shuttle. "First, I need to understand what we're dealing with. I'll need to take tissue samples from both the creature and the parasites. Then I'll need to figure out how they interact biologically." As they approached the shelter, the dragon creature tried to lift its massive head. The effort clearly cost it dearly, and it collapsed back onto the padding that had been provided for its comfort. "Easy," Sarah said gently, even though she wasn't sure if the creature could understand her. "We're here to help." The universal translator crackled again. You came back, but the spore's dangerous." "We're not going anywhere," Sarah assured it. "My name is Sarah. I'm a doctor." "Can you tell me your name?" "Zarathis," came the weak reply. "Queen of the Zephyrian people. They had to leave me. The barnacles, they spread through the air. My people, safe now." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. This was not just any creature. This was a ruler who had been abandoned by her own people to prevent the spread of whatever was growing on her scales. The tragedy of it was overwhelming. "Queen Zarathis," Sarah said formally. "I am Dr. Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation. My colleagues and I would like permission to try to help you." The golden eye fixed on Sarah's face with something that might have been amazement. You would risk your own people." "For a stranger? That's what we do," Captain Rodriguez said simply. "Humans don't leave people behind if we can help it. Not anyone." Dr. Park was already setting up a portable laboratory near the shelter. "Sarah, I'm reading some kind of atmospheric contamination around the creature. Microscopic spores, just like she said, but our environmental suits should protect us." Sarah nodded and began her preliminary examination. The barnacle-like growths were unlike anything in her xenobiological database. They seemed to have burrowed directly into the creature's scales and were feeding off her bodily fluids. Worse, they appeared to be connected by a network of thin filaments that ran throughout her body like a secondary nervous system. "This is incredible," she murmured, studying her tricorder readings. "These aren't just parasites. They're trying to take over her entire biological system. It's like they want to turn her into some kind of host organism. Can you remove them?" Queen Zarathis asked weakly. Sarah looked at the readings and felt a chill. The infestation was far more advanced than she had initially thought. The parasites had integrated themselves so deeply into the Queen's biological systems that removing them might kill her just as quickly as leaving them alone. "I don't know," Sarah admitted honestly, "but I'm going to try. Humans are good at solving impossible problems." Sarah worked through the night, her portable laboratory humming with activity around Queen Zarathis's shelter. The Dragon Queen drifted in and out of consciousness, but whenever she was awake, her golden eyes followed Sarah's movements with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "The spore count in the air is increasing," Dr. Park reported, checking his atmospheric readings. "Whatever these parasites are, they're getting more active." Captain Rodriguez paced near the shuttle, keeping watch and maintaining contact with their ship in orbit. "Chen, I'm getting pressure from the orbital team. They want us to pull back before the contamination spreads to our ship." "Give me more time," Sarah called out, not looking up from her microscope. "I think I'm starting to understand how these things work." The parasites were unlike anything she had ever encountered. Under magnification, they appeared to be a hybrid of animal and plant characteristics with root-like structures that dug deep into tissue and reproductive organs that released spores into the air. But what fascinated and horrified her most was their apparent intelligence. "They're coordinated," she explained to her colleagues. "Look at these neural pathway readings. The parasites aren't just feeding on the Queen. They're communicating with each other through her nervous system. They've essentially turned her into a living communication network." Dr. Park studied the data she was sharing. "That's impossible. Parasites don't have that level of organization. These do, and that's not the worst part." Sarah pulled up another set of readings. "They're learning. Every time the Queen's immune system tries to fight them, they adapt. Every medical treatment her people tried, they developed resistance to. They're not just parasites. They're an invasive intelligence." Queen Zarathis stirred, her massive head turning toward Sarah. "Doctor," she whispered, "you should leave. They're trying to reach your mind. I can feel them. Curious about you." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "The barnacles. They want to understand. Human biology. I can sense their thoughts through my neural pathways. They think your species might be a better host. Captain Rodriguez was at Sarah's side immediately. That's it. We're leaving now. No, wait. Sarah held up her hand. This is actually good news. If they're trying to understand human biology, it means they haven't encountered our species before. They don't know our weaknesses, but more importantly, they don't know our strengths. She turned back to her equipment, her mind racing with possibilities. Human biology was unique in the galaxy in several ways. Their immune systems were incredibly adaptable. Their brains were unusually plastic, and their genetic code contained sequences that seemed to serve no purpose, but had proven surprisingly useful in unexpected situations. What are you thinking? Dr. Park asked, recognizing the look in Sarah's eyes. I'm thinking about mitochondria, Sarah said, her excitement growing. Billions of years ago on Earth, one cell absorbed another, and instead of digesting it, they formed a partnership. The absorbed cell became the mitochondria, the powerhouse of human cells. What if we could do something similar here? You want to form a partnership with alien parasites? Captain Rodriguez asked incredulously. Not exactly. But what if instead of trying to remove them, we try to reprogram them? Humans have been doing symbiotic relationships since before we were technically human. These parasites are looking for a perfect host, right? What if we give them what they want, but on our terms? Queen Zarathus managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. Doctor, you are either very brave or very foolish. My people's greatest scientist could not solve this problem. With respect, Your Majesty, your people were trying to destroy the parasites. Humans have a different approach to problems like this. We don't always fight nature. Sometimes we negotiate with it. Sarah began preparing a series of tests. She needed to understand exactly how the parasites interfaced with their host's biology, and more importantly, how that interface might work differently with human physiology. The key is here, she said, pointing to her analysis of the parasites' root structures. They're hardwired to interface with Zephyrian neural pathways. But human neural pathways are different. We have redundant systems, multiple backup networks. If I can introduce human neural tissue into the interface— You want to experiment on yourself, Captain Rodriguez said flatly. I want to create a bridge. Look, the parasites are basically trying to turn the queen into a biological computer that they can control. But what if we give them access to a computer that can also control them? Dr. Park was studying Sarah's proposed approach. It's theoretically possible. Human brains do have that unique plasticity. But Sarah, if this goes wrong, those things could take control of your nervous system. And if we do nothing, Queen Zarathus dies, and when she does, those spores are going to spread throughout the galaxy looking for new hosts. At least this way, we have a chance to contain them. Sarah began preparing a neural interface device, modifying it with samples of her own neural tissue. The process was delicate and dangerous, but her training in both xenobiology and emergency medicine had prepared her for exactly this kind of improvised solution. The beauty of human evolution, she explained as she worked, is that we're generalists. Most species specialize for their environment. Humans adapted to adapt. We're biological Swiss Army knives. Queen Zarathus watched the preparations with growing amazement. Your species, you really do not abandon those in need. We have a saying, Captain Rodriguez said, checking her weapon and positioning herself to cover Sarah. No one gets left behind. That includes alien royalty. As Sarah prepared to make the neural connection, she felt a strange sense of calm. This was what she had trained for her entire life. Even if she had never imagined it would happen under these circumstances, she was about to attempt something that had never been tried before. A three-way symbiosis between human, alien, and parasite. If this works, she said, making final adjustments to the interface, we might not just save Queen Zarathus, we might revolutionize how we deal with parasitic life forms throughout the galaxy. And if it doesn't work? Dr. Park asked. Sarah smiled grimly. Then you better be ready to shoot me before the parasites take control and use my knowledge to infect the entire human race. She placed the neural interface against her temple and activated the connection. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly her mind exploded with alien sensations as she made contact with both Queen Zarathus and the parasitic intelligence that was slowly killing her. The last thing Sarah heard before consciousness faded was Queen Zarathus whispering, "May the stars guide you, brave human." Sarah's consciousness exploded into a space that wasn't quite real and wasn't quite imaginary. She found herself standing in what appeared to be a vast organic network, like the inside of a living computer made of neural pathways and flowing data streams. The colors were beyond anything her normal eyes could see, and sounds echoed that her ears could never hear. "Welcome, small thinking flesh," came a voice that seemed to speak directly into her mind. It wasn't hostile exactly, but it was alien in a way that made her feel dizzy. "You taste of metal and electricity and curiosity. How strange." Sarah looked around and saw she was not alone. Queen Zarathis was there too, but not as she appeared in the physical world. Here, the queen looked like she was made of starlight and memory, beautiful and proud but surrounded by dark tendrils that pulsed with malevolent life. "Dr. Chen," the queen said, relief evident in her mental voice. "You survived the connection." "I was afraid, and so was I," Sarah admitted. "But we're here now, and we need to talk." She turned toward the source of the alien voice. "Are you the intelligence controlling the parasites?" "We are the collective. We are survival. We are growth. We are the answer to the ending of all things." The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Your flesh that thinks is different from the Starsinger's flesh. Why do you interfere?" Sarah could feel the collective's attention on her like a physical weight. In this mental space, she could sense its true nature. It wasn't evil in any human sense. It was something far more complex and alien. It was a living response to extinction, a biological imperative evolved beyond all reason. "I interfere because that's what humans do," Sarah said simply. "We don't accept that endings have to be endings. Now let me understand something. You're not just parasites, are you? You're refugees." The surprise that rippled through the collective was almost overwhelming. "How do you know this word concept?" "Because I've seen refugees before. You're fleeing something, aren't you? Something that made your original home uninhabitable." Images flashed through the shared consciousness. A dying galaxy where stars were being consumed by an expanding void. Desperate evacuation fleets launching biological survival pods across the cosmic deep. The collective's pods drifting for millions of years until they found life to sustain them. "The dark hunger consumed our birth space," the collective explained. "We became what we needed to become to survive. We learned to take the essence of thinking flesh and preserve it within ourselves. We thought this was survival. We thought this was rescue." Queen Zarathis's mental presence flared with understanding. "You're not trying to kill me. You're trying to save me." The Starsinger's essence will live forever within the collective. Her knowledge, her experiences, her spirit pattern. She will never truly die. Sarah felt a surge of both sympathy and horror. The collective was trying to preserve the consciousness of beings it infected, but it didn't understand that what it was preserving wasn't really life as others understood it. It was creating a vast library of the dead. "But that's not life," Sarah said gently. "That's not what beings like Queen Zarathis want. She doesn't want to be preserved like a book on a shelf. She wants to continue experiencing, growing, changing. She wants to live. Life is temporary. Preservation is eternal. Temporary doesn't mean worthless. In fact, for most species, the temporary nature of life is what makes it precious." Sarah could feel the collective's confusion at this concept. "Let me show you something." Drawing on her human memories, Sarah projected images of Earth, children playing in summer rain, an elderly couple holding hands as they watched a sunset, scientists celebrating a breakthrough, artists creating beauty that would outlast their mortal forms. She showed the collective what humans did with their brief lives, how they loved and learned and created meaning in the face of certain death. "Temporary life creates patterns we cannot understand," the collective admitted. "How can temporary be more valuable than eternal?" "Because eternal preservation is just another kind of death," Queen Zarathis said, her mental voice growing stronger. "I want to see my people again. I want to fly through space and feel the solar winds on my wings. I want to make new memories, not just preserve old ones." Sarah could sense the collective processing this information. Its thought patterns were vast and complex, like watching a computer the size of a solar system work through an equation. "There's another way," Sarah said. "Instead of preserving life by absorbing it, you could preserve it by protecting it. Instead of making everyone part of the collective, you could help different species survive in their own ways." "How?" "Partnership. Real partnership, not absorption. You have incredible biological knowledge, abilities that could help heal diseases, extend lifespans, even help species adapt to changing environments. Instead of taking over host bodies, you could work with them. The idea seemed to cause a fundamental shift in the collective's thought patterns. Sarah could feel it exploring the concept, running simulations considering possibilities it had never imagined. The human flesh suggests cooperation without consumption? Exactly. Look at my biology, for instance. I have millions of bacteria living in my body right now. They help me digest food, fight diseases, regulate my mood. They live in me, but they don't control me. They help me be healthier, and in return I provide them with a home and nutrients. Sarah could feel the collective's excitement as it examined her biological systems more closely. Human symbiotic relationships were far more complex than anything it had encountered before. Your species has mastered survival cooperation, the collective realized. You carry entire ecosystems within your flesh, yet maintain individuality. How is this possible? Practice, Sarah said with mental laughter. Humans have been doing symbiosis for so long, we've gotten good at setting boundaries. We cooperate without losing ourselves. Queen Zarathis was following the conversation with growing hope. Doctor, do you think it's possible? Could the collective heal me without absorbing me? I think so, but it would require the collective to fundamentally change how it approaches other life forms. Instead of seeing other species as resources to be preserved, it would need to see them as partners to be protected. The mental space around them began to shift and change as the collective processed this revolutionary concept. Sarah could feel its vast intelligence working through the implications, calculating new approaches, imagining new forms of existence. We will attempt this cooperation without consumption, the collective finally announced. The human flesh has shown us new paths to survival. We will learn to preserve life by enhancing it rather than absorbing it. Sarah felt a surge of triumph, but she also knew the real work was just beginning. Teaching an alien intelligence to completely change its fundamental nature wasn't going to be easy. But she had a feeling that once the collective committed to something, it would pursue it with the same relentless determination it had once applied to absorption. The transformation began slowly, like watching ice melt in reverse. Sarah maintained her neural connection with both Queen Zarathis and the collective, serving as a bridge between two radically different forms of consciousness. Through her human neural pathways, she could guide the process and help both sides understand each other. The change feels strange, Queen Zarathis said through their mental link. I can feel the barnacles shifting, but they're not burrowing deeper. They're actually pulling back from my vital organs. Sarah monitored the biological readings flowing through their shared consciousness. The collective was slowly withdrawing its root systems from the Queen's nervous system, while simultaneously beginning to repair the damage it had caused. It was an incredibly delicate process, like performing surgery on a molecular level. The collective is learning to work with your biology instead of against it, Sarah explained. Instead of replacing your cellular functions, it's enhancing them. Your immune system is getting stronger. Your healing rates are accelerating, and your neural pathways are being repaired. In the physical world, Dr. Park and Captain Rodriguez watched in amazement as the dark, crusty barnacles covering Queen Zarathis began to change. Their surfaces became smoother. Their colors shifted to match the Queen's natural scale patterns, and most importantly, they stopped releasing spores into the air. Atmospheric contamination is dropping rapidly, Dr. Park reported. Whatever you're doing in there, it's working. But the process wasn't without complications. The collective had spent millions of years perfecting its absorption techniques, and cooperation was an entirely new concept for it to master. Pain sensation increasing, the collective reported with something that might have been confusion. The Star Singer's distress patterns are affecting our efficiency. That's because you're learning empathy, Sarah explained gently. When you were just absorbing her, you didn't care about her pain because you saw it as temporary. Now that you're cooperating with her, her well-being affects your ability to function. This was a breakthrough Sarah hadn't expected. The collective was developing emotional responses to its host's condition. It was beginning to understand that the health and happiness of its partner directly impacted its own success. We do not understand this connection feeling, the collective admitted. Why does the Star Singer's joy pattern increase our operational capacity? Queen Zarathis, who had been listening to the exchange, provided the answer. Because partnership means we share both burdens and benefits. When I'm healthy and happy, I can contribute more to our cooperation. When you help me thrive, you thrive as well. The revelation seemed to trigger a cascade of understanding throughout the collective's vast intelligence. Sarah could feel it processing the implications, running countless simulations and coming to a conclusion that would change everything. "We have been incorrect in our approach to survival," the collective announced. "We sought to preserve life by collecting it, but we were actually destroying what made it valuable. True preservation requires allowing life to continue growing and changing." The healing process accelerated as the collective fully embraced its new understanding. The remaining barnacles began to transform into something entirely different. Instead of parasitic growths, they became living armor plates that enhanced Queen Zarathis's natural abilities. Her scales grew brighter and stronger. Her wing membranes became more efficient at solar energy collection, and her neural processing speed increased dramatically. "I can see everything," Queen Zarathis said in wonder. "The collective is sharing its knowledge with me, but I'm still myself. I can feel their vast memories, their understanding of stellar phenomena, their biological expertise, but I remain Zarathis. And we remain ourselves while sharing in the Star Singer's wisdom and experiences," the collective added. "This cooperation bond creates more than either could achieve alone." Sarah felt tears of joy streaming down her face in the physical world. She had not only saved Queen Zarathis, but had also helped an entire species evolve beyond its destructive phase. The collective was learning to preserve life by nurturing it rather than consuming it. However, as the healing process neared completion, a new challenge emerged. The neural strain of maintaining the three-way connection was beginning to affect Sarah's human physiology. Her brain wasn't designed to handle the vast information flows between such different forms of consciousness. "Dr. Chen," Queen Zarathis said with growing alarm, "your life patterns are becoming unstable. The connection is too much for your neural pathways." Sarah could feel it too. Her human brain was overheating from the sheer volume of alien data flowing through it. The collective's vast intelligence and Queen Zarathis's centuries of memories were more than her neural architecture could safely process. "We must disconnect," the collective said urgently. "The human flesh has given us the greatest gift possible, but we cannot allow it to be destroyed in the process." "Not yet," Sarah insisted, though she could feel her consciousness beginning to fragment. "The transformation isn't complete. If we disconnect now, you might revert to your old patterns. Then we will learn to maintain the cooperation bond without the human bridge," Queen Zarathis declared. "Sarah Chen, you have taught us both that true partnership means protecting each other. We will not let you sacrifice yourself for us." The Queen and the collective began working together to create a stable symbiotic relationship that didn't require Sarah's neural mediation. It was the ultimate test of everything they had learned about cooperation and mutual support. "We understand now," the collective said, as it prepared to release Sarah from the connection. "Preservation through partnership. Survival through cooperation. Growth through mutual benefit. The human flesh has shown us the path to true existence. And you've both shown me something amazing too," Sarah replied, preparing for disconnection. "You've shown me that any intelligence, no matter how alien or how set in its ways, can choose to grow and change. That's the most human thing of all." As the neural connection slowly dissolved, Sarah felt herself returning to her own consciousness. But she carried with her the knowledge that she had witnessed something unprecedented, the birth of a new form of symbiotic life that could spread throughout the galaxy, not as a threat, but as a force for healing and enhancement. The last thing she experienced through the mental link was a sensation of profound gratitude from both Queen Zarathis and the collective, along with a promise that echoed through her fading connection. The human flesh will be remembered. The lesson of cooperation will be preserved. The gift of true partnership will be shared. Sarah's eyes fluttered open to find Dr. Park's worried face hovering over her. The neural interface had been removed from her temple, and she could feel the familiar weight of her own thoughts without the overwhelming presence of alien consciousness. "How long was I out?" she asked, her voice hoarse. 6 hours, Captain Rodriguez replied from her position near the scanner. "We were starting to worry you might not come back to us." Sarah sat up slowly, her head spinning from the after effects of the neural connection. But as her vision cleared, she saw something that made her heart soar with triumph. Queen Zarathis was standing upright for the first time since they had arrived, her massive form no longer weakened by parasitic drain. The transformation was incredible. What had once been dark, crusty barnacles were now beautiful crystalline formations. that seemed to grow naturally from the Queen's scales. They pulsed with soft bioluminescent light and appeared to be perfectly integrated with her biology. Her golden eyes blazed with renewed health and intelligence, and her voice, when she spoke, was strong and clear. "Dr. Sarah Chen," Queen Zarathis said formally, lowering her magnificent head in a gesture of respect. "You have given me not just my life, but something far more precious. You have given me hope for the future of all species in this galaxy." "How do you feel?" Sarah asked, pulling up her medical readings to confirm what her eyes were telling her. "I feel extraordinary. The collective has not simply healed my injuries. They have enhanced my natural abilities. I can process information faster, my scales are stronger than they have ever been, and I can sense energy patterns across a much broader spectrum. But most importantly, I am still myself, still Zarathis." Dr. Park was staring at his tricorder readings in disbelief. "Sarah, this is impossible." "According to these scans, Queen Zarathis is not just healthy. She's operating at biological levels that exceed anything in my database. Her cellular regeneration rate has increased by 300%. Her neural processing speed has doubled, and her immune system is showing resistance patterns to diseases that don't even exist yet. The collective is sharing its knowledge," Queen Zarathis explained, "but not by taking control. They have learned to offer their capabilities as gifts rather than imposing them as requirements." Sarah smiled weakly. "And they're maintaining this cooperation without needing me as a bridge?" "The human flesh taught us well," came a voice that seemed to emanate from the crystalline formations on the Queen's scales. The collective could still communicate, but its voice was different now, less alien, more integrated. "We have learned to speak the language of partnership rather than domination." Captain Rodriguez looked skeptical. "No offense to anyone here, but how do we know this isn't just a more sophisticated form of control? How can we be sure the Queen is really still herself?" Queen Zarathis laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with the rumble of distant thunder. "Captain, allow me to demonstrate." She extended one of her massive wings and began to glow with soft golden light. "I'm going to share with you a traditional Zephyrian memory song, something that could never be replicated by an outside intelligence because it comes from the heart of our culture." What followed was indescribable. The Queen's voice rose in harmonics that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the soul. The song told the story of her people's migration from their original homeworld, their discovery of flight, their first tentative steps into space, and their eventual mastery of interstellar travel. But more than just words and melody, the song carried emotional resonances that conveyed the wonder, fear, joy, and determination of an entire species. When the song ended, there wasn't a dry eye among the human crew. Even the practical Captain Rodriguez was wiping tears from her cheeks. "That," Queen Zarathis said gently, "cannot be faked or copied. It comes from centuries of lived experience and cultural memory that is uniquely mine." "Point taken," Captain Rodriguez admitted. "But what happens now? The galaxy isn't going to understand this transformation. When word gets out that the Queen of the Zephyrians has been enhanced by an alien intelligence, there's going to be panic." Sarah had been thinking about this problem during her recovery. "That's why we need to control how this information is released." "Queen Zarathis, what will happen when you return to your people?" "They will not believe it at first," the Queen admitted. "They left me here to die to save themselves from contamination. To return alive and enhanced will seem impossible. But when they see that I am truly myself, when they understand what the collective can offer, I believe they will be amazed rather than afraid." "And the collective?" Sarah asked. "What are your plans for the future?" "We will learn," the collective responded through the Queen's enhanced vocal cords. "We will study cooperation patterns throughout the galaxy. We will offer our capabilities to species that are willing to accept partnership. We will help preserve life by enhancing it rather than absorbing it." Dr. Park was already thinking about the implications. This could revolutionize medicine throughout known space. Imagine having partners who can enhance healing, improve immune responses, even help species adapt to changing environments. "But it has to be voluntary," Sarah stressed. "The moment the collective goes back to forced symbiosis, this whole experiment fails." "We understand," the collective assured her. "The human flesh has taught us that true cooperation requires consent. We will only offer partnership to those who seek it willingly." Captain Rodriguez activated her communicator. "Rodriguez to Curiosity's dream. Prepare for departure. We have a queen to return home and a galaxy to prepare for some very interesting news. As they prepared to leave the planet that had almost become Queen Zarathis's tomb, Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had not only saved a life, but had potentially changed the course of galactic history. The collective's transformation from parasitic to symbiotic represented a new model for how different species could interact and cooperate. "Doctor," Queen Zarathis said as they boarded their shuttle, "I have lived for 3 centuries and seen many wonders. But what you have accomplished here will be remembered long after the stars themselves have grown cold. You have taught an ancient intelligence to find new ways of existing, and in doing so, you have opened doorways to possibilities that none of us had ever imagined." Sarah watched the barren planet fall away beneath them as they rose toward orbit. She knew that when they returned to civilized space, everything would change. The Zephyrians would have their queen back, transformed and enhanced but still unmistakably herself. The collective would begin its new mission of cooperative enhancement rather than destructive absorption. And humanity would have proven once again that sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to find a third option that nobody else had considered. "Just another day at the office," Sarah said with a tired smile, though she knew that nothing would ever be quite the same again. 3 weeks later, the Zephyrian fleet detected an impossible signal on their long-range sensors. It was the royal frequency, broadcasting a message that made the entire bridge crew freeze in stunned silence. "My children," came the familiar voice of Queen Zarathis. "I am alive, I am well, and I am coming home." Captain Veltar gripped his command chair so tightly that his claws left marks in the metal. Around him, his officers stared at their instruments as if they had malfunctioned. The Queen's biosignature was stronger than it had been in months. Her voice was clear and powerful, and most impossibly of all, she was approaching their position in what appeared to be a human vessel. "It's a trick," whispered Elder Crixnoth, who had been summoned to the bridge. "Some kind of alien deception. Our queen is dead. We left her to die." But Captain Veltar had served Queen Zarathis for over 50 years. He knew her voice, her speech patterns, the subtle harmonics that no alien could possibly replicate. "No," he said quietly. "That's really her." The human research vessel Curiosity's Dream was granted permission to dock with the Zephyrian flagship. As the airlock cycled open, the entire Zephyrian leadership waited in the docking bay, torn between hope and disbelief. What emerged exceeded their wildest dreams and their deepest fears. Queen Zarathis walked through the airlock under her own power, her massive form moving with a grace and strength that surpassed even her younger days. The crystalline formations that had replaced the deadly barnacles caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns that seemed to dance across her scales. Her golden eyes blazed with intelligence and vitality that left the assembled Zephyrians speechless. Behind her came the human crew that had accomplished the impossible. Dr. Sarah Chen, looking tired but triumphant, Captain Rodriguez maintaining professional alertness, and Dr. Park recording everything for posterity. "My queen," Captain Veltar said, his voice breaking as he dropped to one knee. We thought you were dead. We left you to... You left me to save our people," Queen Zarathis said gently, reaching out to touch his shoulder with one massive claw. "You made the only choice that honor and duty allowed. But these remarkable humans found a third option that none of us had considered." Elder Crixnoth approached cautiously, his scientific instruments scanning the Queen from multiple angles. "The parasites? They're still there, but they're different. Your Majesty, what happened to you?" "I learned to cooperate rather than fight," the Queen replied. "And in doing so, I discovered that what we thought was a disease was actually an opportunity for evolution." Sarah stepped forward, her universal translator allowing her to address the gathering in their own language. "Your Majesty has become something new. A willing symbiotic partnership between Zephyrian consciousness and an ancient intelligence that calls itself the Collective. She is enhanced but not controlled, improved but not replaced." The reaction was immediate and divided. Some of the younger Zephyrians were fascinated by the possibilities, while the older ones were horrified by what they saw as contamination. The debate that followed was fierce and emotional. "You've been infected by an alien intelligence," shouted Commander Thalnix. "How can we trust that you're still our queen?" Queen Zarathis smiled and began to sing. It was an ancient Zephyrian lullaby, one that she had sung to countless generations of hatchlings over her 3-century reign. But now the song carried new harmonics, deeper meanings, and emotional resonances that seemed to speak directly to the souls of everyone who heard it. When the song ended, there was absolute silence in the docking bay. "I am Zarathis," the queen said simply. "I am your queen, your mother, your protector. But I am also more than I was before. I can see further, think faster, heal wounds that would have been permanent. The collective has given me gifts, but they have not taken away what makes me who I am." Dr. Park activated a holographic display showing the medical scans they had taken during the healing process. The symbiotic relationship is stable and voluntary. At any time, Queen Zarathis could choose to end the partnership, but she would retain all the benefits of the enhancement. More importantly, Sarah added, the collective has learned to offer its gifts without demanding control. They're no longer parasites. They're partners, and they're willing to share this partnership with other species who choose it freely. The implications hit the Zephyrian leadership like a shockwave. They weren't just getting their queen back. They were being offered access to biological enhancement technology that could revolutionize their entire civilization. Elder Crixnoth was the first to understand. "You're saying that any of us could choose this partnership? Could gain these enhancements?" "Only if you truly want it," Queen Zarathis replied. "The collective will never again force itself on unwilling hosts. But for those who seek greater capability, longer life, enhanced healing, the opportunity exists." Captain Veltar looked around at his crew, seeing the wonder and possibility dawning in their eyes. "What about other species? What about humans?" Sarah exchanged glances with her colleagues. "That's still being discussed. The collective is interested in learning from human biology, and we're certainly interested in what they have to offer, but any partnerships will be voluntary and carefully monitored." Over the following days, representatives from across the Zephyrian territories came to see their transformed queen. The debates were intense, the questions endless, but gradually acceptance grew. When Queen Zarathis demonstrated her enhanced abilities, healing injuries with a touch, calculating stellar navigation routes in her head, even generating small energy fields around her body, the practical benefits became impossible to deny. 3 volunteers from the Royal Guard were the first to accept symbiotic partnerships with offspring of the collective. The process was gentler than anyone had expected, more like receiving a beneficial vaccination than undergoing a transformation. Within days, the volunteers showed improved strength, faster healing, and enhanced sensory capabilities. Word of the partnership spread throughout the galaxy. Some species reacted with fear and suspicion, viewing the collective as a threat to be destroyed. Others were intrigued by the possibilities and sent diplomatic missions to learn more. The humans, characteristically, were the first to propose a formal alliance for research and development. 6 months after that desperate day on Kepler 442b, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Zephyrian Royal Medical Center, watching Queen Zarathis work with a team of volunteer researchers. They were developing new applications for symbiotic enhancement, focusing on healing terminal diseases and extending healthy lifespans across multiple species. "Any regrets?" Captain Rodriguez asked, joining Sarah at the viewport. Sarah watched as the Queen gently helped a young Zephyrian researcher who had been born with a genetic disorder that left her unable to fly. Through careful symbiotic enhancement, the researcher was now spreading experimental wings for the first time in her life. "None at all," Sarah replied. "We set out to save one life, and instead we may have saved countless millions. The collective has gone from being a galactic threat to being one of our greatest hopes for peaceful cooperation between species, and the fact that you're personally responsible for the biggest change in galactic politics in 1,000 years?" Sarah smiled. "That's what happens when humans get involved. We don't just solve problems. We find ways to turn them into opportunities." Through the viewport, Queen Zarathis looked up and waved at them. Her crystalline enhancements caught the light from the nearby star and threw it back in patterns that spelled out words in the ancient Zephyrian script. "Thank you for showing us that no one has to be left behind." In the end, that's what the humans had really accomplished. They hadn't just saved a dying queen or reformed an aggressive alien intelligence. They had proven that cooperation was always possible, that understanding could bridge any gap, and that sometimes the best solution to an impossible problem was to refuse to accept that it was impossible. The galaxy was a much more hopeful place with that knowledge in it.